Well, thank you, Jameel, for this is Jameel Nicholson, and we are on Let's Talk Travel. Thank you for joining me, Jameel. And I was just watching your Instagram and just talking to you a few minutes ago about that, and love to see all the travel that you've been doing, whether I'm on your Facebook or on your Instagram. And I just wanted to take some time to sit and speak with you a little bit about the points, because you're the one who introduced me to the whole points guy. And I was at a recent the Boston Travel Show in February, and I actually had the opportunity of meeting him and hearing him speak on stage. So I was like so excited. I was like, my cousin, he introduced me to this guy. Now I get to see him and meet him. And so I figured I would just do a full circle and come back to you and ask for you to tell my viewers a little bit more about the points program and how you utilize it to travel all over the world, and get some of your feedback, tips and tricks, and things, and your perspective on travel overall. So let's see, one of the things I saw recently, Cape Town. You were in Cape Town. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Cape Town and if you use points on that travel?
Absolutely. So, all right. So, just a little background on myself. I'm a mechanical engineer at NASA. So, whoop, whoop. I work here in the Artemis program here in Florida at the Kennedy Space Center, and I use points and miles to subsidize my travel. So, I have relatively middle class job, but points and miles and traveling enables me to go places that I normally would not be able to go to, even with, it's really not dependent so much on your salary. It's mostly on maximizing the money that you have and making it go further. So getting to the question about Cape Town, I found through Thrifty Traveler that they had a list of one of the best points and miles deals you could possibly do is using American Airlines miles to fly Qatar Airways Q Suites business class, and the best use of those points was actually going from the U.S. to South Africa, and particularly Cape Town. And so I wanted to try, I've flown business class before with Air France using points. And then I wanted to really take that epic redemption while I just happened to have the right amount of American Airlines miles, and it was 75,000 American Airlines miles and $48 in taxes. Now, this is a $6,000 flight, and you have your own enclosed suite, on-demand dining. They have a pre-departure drink. I mean, it's one of the best business class flight you can possibly take, and it was 24 hours of business class. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to sit on a plane for 24 hours." Trust me, it was absolutely worth it. I got a lie flat seat. I got to sleep. I got to stay at the Al Morja Lounge in Qatar, which my brother can attest to as well. It's a 100,000 square foot lounge, on-demand dining, anything you want. Pretty much, there's plenty of places to plug in, to relax, to to kind of unwind in between another stellar flight. So it was 14 hours from. I took off from Orlando, had a layover in Dallas, caught Qatar in Dallas, landed in Doha, about 3 hours in Doha at the lounge, of course, and then another 10 hours to Cape Town from Doha, Qatar. And it was amazing. It was one of the best redemptions I could possibly ever make. And it got me to a place that I had on my bucket list, but I was not sure exactly how to get to Cape Town because it's also very far away and typically very expensive. But, that was. Yeah, but I got it done, and it was amazing. And I would absolutely recommend. I tell everybody about that. That was one of the best redemptions I could possibly ever made. And I told my coworkers when I got back to NASA, and they were floored. Like, how in the world did you afford that? And I said that is points and miles will get you so much further. But yeah, so that's that in a nutshell.
That's awesome, and the views were spectacular. I just love watching it all day. I was like, I just tuned in. I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. I was so happy for you. Wishing that I could have been there with you. It's amazing. So that's one thing I know we share, is just the love of trying to see the world, and taking it from a bucket list, but making this more of a lifestyle choice. And so how did you get hooked on points, and where did you learn about it?
Ironically, I learned from my youngest brother, Matthew. He typically travels with United Airlines through his business. Well, let's say do business travel. His work actually pays for a lot of his travels. So he accumulated a lot of United miles and so on and so forth. And as a Muslim, I used to think that credit cards were unlawful for us. And then I started asking my brother just out of the blue. We were at my timeshare resort in North Carolina when the shutdown started to happen. Actually the quarantine started to begin right in March 2020. We were on our way back from North Carolina. And I started to ask Matthew, how do you travel so much in business class for free and, economy? He's always flying around. And I thought he was paying out of pocket. Found out he was, mostly business related travel. So then I said, well, if he could do that, how can I do that, myself? And he told me about credit cards. He has a United card. He spends all the time on it. Anyway, I started looking into it. And that's when, kind of like the doors open. And I went, looked, consulted somebody, a religious scholar, and found out that it was completely permissible for Muslims to have credit cards and to use credit cards effectively. So that's one thing I want to really kind of emphasize. But the best thing is that, I wanted to travel, and I went back to school, got an engineering degree, work at NASA. And I said, oh, now I'm financially set on that side. But then now how can I really leverage it? And of course, now I have a family. So, and then I started looking into it. I got into the Points Guy and Thrifty Traveler and Frequent Miler. And I read I vacuumed and hoovered up any kind of information I could possibly find. I looked into the programs themselves, and then I just saw it was like a cornucopia of options. And I said, I traveled before when we were backpackers, when I was just at the end of my military career. And I spent a month in Indonesia, but that was the kind of the backpacking lifestyle. And now in my, I'm over the age of 30. That's not acceptable for me to, I wanted something a little bit more, I kind of upgrade my travel and travel more often, but not necessarily on a shoestring budget. So Points and Miles really kind of opened up the doors for that.
That's great. And once I started going down the rabbit hole Points, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how he does it. I have to get him on to talk about this to make it a little bit easier to where to start. So what would be one of your recommendations on where someone who doesn't know anything about Points, where should they start first?
Okay, so there's kind of two tracks. The general Points and Miles community, everybody says, start with Chase because of Chase's 544 rule, where if you get 5 cards from any bank whatsoever, if you get them on your credit report, Chase will not issue you any other cards. So typically in the Points and Miles community, everybody emphasizes Chase cards. However, there's a new entrant called Built Rewards, which I think is probably one of the best starter cards for a lot of people, and it's worth a 524 slot, in particular because you're able to, it's the only credit card you can earn points on rent, that if you're paying rent and you're, redeeming, you're spending that cash on like a cash or check basis, you can earn points kind of in the background. It's almost on automatic. The downside of the card is that it has no initial sign-up bonus, but for me, the points and particularly their partners, Built partners, are actually some of the best in the industry. And I think it's worth getting the Built Rewards card, especially if you only want one card. Some people, I have 22 credit cards right now and growing, but and I don't have debt or interest or something like that. That's another myth. There's a lot of myths that are going around in the Points Miles community. But if you're going to start off in this game, I would say the Built Rewards card, the Built MasterCard, in particular because it has they have a partnership that they just added about 2 months ago with Point Me, where they made it very user friendly in order to use your points, because that's a lot of the hesitation that a lot of people have in getting into this space, is that there's so much information and it's kind of like it's an information overload about how to maximize your points, where to transfer, when to use them, when not to use them, when to pay cash. And Built really kind of made a user friendly program where even if you don't know anything about Points and Miles, you can just use the Point Me function inside the Built Rewards app, and you can just put in 2 airports and it'll show you the points options between those 2 airports.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Uh-oh. Did I lose you?
Fee, and it's a MasterCard. So you
Jameel, I think we cut out for just a minute. Could you just go back just a few more minutes? You started to talk about I think we just lost technology, interrupted.
Oh, no problem.
Just you were talking about how easy it was with Point Me and how they were making and built the Built card.
Have a partnership with them.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's integrated into the app. You just go into the Built Rewards app and say you didn't know what the best points options were between, say, Miami and London. And you can just plug it into the Built Rewards app and it'll tell you what are the best point prices for that particular route on that particular date. And it'll base it on the transfer partners on the point side. A lot of apps that, like you can go to Google Flights and you can always find the cash prices. Or you can go to Chase Rewards Chase Travel Portal and the Amex Travel Portal, and it'll spit out cash prices for a particular flight itinerary. But Point Me offers the points price on a particular itinerary. So, like say if you wanted to fly Iberia business class, typically let's say IAD in Dulles in Washington, and you want to go to Madrid, Point Me will point out those options. So you can just, instead of just using just cash options, it'll also give you points options. So Built is kind of an all-in-one, they made it an all-in-one solution. It's very simple and it's kind of approachable for the beginner. But other than that, I would say definitely start with Chase Rewards. The Chase cards are actually quite valuable in the space. And I have both. I run an ABC setup, Amex, Built, and Chase. So, but for the beginner, I would say Built is a really strong contender, and then the Chase Sapphire Preferred. Those are the two cards I would recommend for a beginner.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, you did touch upon something, which is you don't carry debt. And Brian Kelly made that point when I listened to his talk, is that in order to benefit from this whole points program, you can't carry your debt. You have to pay your bills every day, all the time. So it doesn't work if you're carrying debt on your cards. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one of the probably the first commandment of Points and Miles space, is that this hobby is absolutely not for you if you cannot manage credit cards. Period. Like that is a cardinal known, because the interest that you're going to be paying, even if you're counting a balance, even a small balance, will completely wipe out all the rewards that you earn. So the first thing is you have to have your financial house in order. That being said, you do not have to be wealthy to participate in Points and Miles. I just applied for my mother-in-law. I got her the Capital One Venture One card yesterday, and she was surprisingly approved for a $10,000 limit. And she's a green card holder. She's actually not even a U.S. citizen, and she works, a relatively service job related to the medical industry. But you can do it without having, a six-figure income. You don't have to be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer to know to participate in this game. And actually, the people that, if you're just a regular normal person, everybody can participate. That's what I think is one of the best aspects of the Points and Miles game, is that it democratizes travel for a lot of people. And so you can fly in business class and enjoy those benefits without being able to pay for a $6,000 ticket.
Right. And that's exactly what, when I started Experience Travel Network, that's one of the things that I wanted to do. I was we were young when we had children, my husband and I, but we knew we wanted to travel. And so I had to become resourceful over the years. And I want to bring with this brand the ability to share with folks that how accessible travel can actually be, and ways that they can do this. And when you turned me on to the points, I was like, this is a great way for people who have, like you said, their financial house in order, and who can manage all of this, points and where you're going to, whether you said you have 22 cards. So
yeah,
you have to be a special kind of person to be able to manage those. And I watched several videos on other people who have way more than that. He has like a whole book full of credit cards, and then he's doing this. And I was like, how can the average person who can do this on like 5 to 10 cards? Do you think that's possible for somebody to? I feel like 5 to 10 cards is a little more manageable. Do you think that there's options to do points and travel with just that?
Absolutely. I think it's not the number of cards that you have. When I got 22 cards, it's because of the particular type of travel that I want to do and the partners that I want to work with. Like I have a Hilton card, so I get that for having, Hilton Gold status and having benefits with Hilton and earning Hilton points. And then I have a Delta card because, particularly in my area, Delta is one of the strongest airline partners. United is not even in this space on the Eastern Florida seaboard. So that I would not say that 22 is what you need to have. That's what works for me. Mm-hmm. But you can do it on just one card. If you had just, one travel credit card that you can travel with internationally, I would typically recommend, especially now that I've been to South Africa and I've been to many places in Europe, you need to have a Visa or MasterCard. Amex is great, but you need to have a Visa or MasterCard for everyday spending. But you can do it, like I said, the Bilt MasterCard or the Chase Sapphire Preferred. That's actually my personal go-to card when I'm traveling overseas because my Amex cards are typically not accepted. But you can do it with just one. If you want to get more cards, that enables you to get to really increase your point balances through sign-up bonuses. That's where those, the having multiple cards kind of comes into play. So, if you just want to have one card, it's going to take a little bit longer to build up enough points balance to actually travel. So you can do it, but it'll just your timeline will be a lot longer. Whereas if you're getting multiple cards and you're able to manage your finances and you earn tons of points, like I have 1.6, I think 1.4 million points right now across different airlines and hotels. And so that enables me to essentially travel without paying anything. I haven't bought an actual cash ticket on a flight in 3 years. Wow. So that's that's the difference between having 22 cards and having one card. If I had one card, you could still do it, but you'd be paying cash a lot higher proportion in cash in order to travel.
So you made 2 points. One, you talked about how you have the Hilton card and then you have a Delta because Delta's in your area. And that is something that Brian Kelly also spoke about, which is to start, you really just have to look at your category of spend. So if you look through your bank account and say, how much do I spend on entertainment? How much do I spend on, rent? How much do I spend on groceries? And really figure out what card offers the best 3 times, 5 times, 2 times points based on those categories. And that's the card that you would choose, right? Mm-hmm. And then, like as you mentioned, pick a hotel, but you don't throw spaghetti at the wall to like a Delta.
Yeah.
And that's why you need a different type of card, like the Bilt card that's not just for the Marriott or just for the Hilton, but you need a combination. So I love that you have a combination.
Yes, actually, thank you for that point, Nikki, because that's a really good point. So I want to say my core cards are all transferable points cards. That's something that Brian Kelly will definitely say. And most of the Thrifty Traveler team is that your core set of cards should be all transferable points cards. Like I have the Chase Trifecta, the Chase Sapphire Preferred, the Freedom Unlimited, the old school Freedom. I grandfathered in. I had the old one. And then also I have the Amex Everyday Preferred and the Amex Green Card. Those are my core cards, and those are all transferable points, and those have bonuses that match all of my spending. So, and then the ancillary cards, which I'll have at the edge, will be like my Air France card and my Delta card and my Hilton card, but those are not my core everyday spending cards. Whenever I go to the grocery store or I go to Office Depot, it's always going to be my Chase or Amex cards, which are the transferable points that come directly from the bank. And I can transfer them to any partner whenever they may fit my actual travel plans. And that what I would say to most travelers, because that was something that I learned this game from my brother Matthew, but that's something that I'm teaching him about the value of transferable points. And many other people, I'm telling them, have transferable points, because sometimes when I flew to Qatar, I used American Airlines miles, but now I've burned all those points down, but I still can fly that same Q Suites flight through British Airways by transferring Amex and Chase points to British Airways and then moving those points over from British Airways to Qatar, and I can still book that flight, even though I don't have the American Airlines miles anymore. I already burned them. So that, that enables you to have a lot more flexibility. And, flying Virgin Atlantic, when I flew back we'll just go back to the Cape Town example. I use American Airlines miles to get to Cape Town. Then I use Virgin points to fly Virgin to London. And then I use my British Airways Avios to fly British Airways to Germany. And then I transferred points from Amex and Chase to Singapore, and I flew Singapore back to New York City. Mm-hmm. So I flew all those different airlines because I had transferable points, and I was not locked into just American or just Delta, because that's something that even some of my coworkers at NASA, they have, oh yeah, I have a Southwest card or I have a Delta card. But then when you need to fly somewhere like, you need to go to the Maldives, well, Delta doesn't fly directly to the Maldives. So unless it's a partner that they can get you there, you're kind of stuck. You're only stuck with the options that Delta works with. So those co-branded cards, I think they always have a place because of the perks that they offer, but your core credit card points earning strategy should be centered on transferable points.
That's awesome. Yeah, he did talk a lot about that. You also made a point about, you have over 1 million points out there. And what Brian was talking about is unused points. There's millions, if not billions, of unused points, and oftentimes it comes from like an employer. So one thing that I just wrote an article on LinkedIn about, the savvy business traveler, and one thing that they could do, because I have a corporate card, and so the suggestion was go to your employer and ask if you can use their points. They hired you to travel and do business for them. Why not allow? That's a great way for an employer to give a perk to the employee, especially if they're trying to find benefits and differentiate themselves. But also that allows you to collect those points you're traveling for business, in addition to those points that you're using on your own personal thing to again expand your trip while you're out there, or use it to go on vacation and take your family when you come back, since you've been on the road. So
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
amazing how many thousands of points millions of points out there that are gone unused. Do you have any other tips or tricks that similar to that might be useful?
I would say like my brother Matthew, he flies with United. His employer usually flies with United, and he can use those points however he sees fit, and he does. So his personal travel, he has a lot of points invested with United. So I would say that as well. If you're a corporate traveler, you're a road warrior, try to see, what companies that your company works with. Like say if you typically, you stay with Marriott, your company will only put you in Marriott properties. Get a Marriott credit card, because then you also get elite status, and you're able to take those points that are money that's not being spent out of your pocket, your employer is paying for it, and you can leverage that for future travel and future stays. So you can save yourself so much more money, rather than just kind of riding along and not really capitalizing. Find all those arbitrage opportunities where something is being spent anyway, and try to channel that into your own personal use.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now, last question, or maybe we'll see how much time we have left, but have you ever had any bad experience using the points system on your trips?
Not yet. I've only been doing this a couple of years. I haven't had any really bad experiences. I would say like not catastrophic, but time will tell. The only thing I would say is, I not knowing, I'd say the one thing I did before I really got into points and miles, I didn't understand the value of points. So I redeemed actually my American Airlines miles. This is back in 2019, before I even knew what they were worth. I redeemed them for a short flight from Orlando to Buffalo, New York. Now I paid 22,000 American Airlines miles for that flight. And that I would say was a bad redemption, because that flight I could have easily paid, just maybe $150. So that was a complete waste of points. That what I would say was, really understand, like a lot of websites like 1 Mile at a Time or the Points Guy, they have monthly valuations for each of your points, and just understand what your points are worth. There's always a baseline value for each airline or hotel point. And just take the time to understand that, even if you only have 1 point system, just so that you're not using your points for, I would say, quote unquote, bad redemption. If it saves you, if you don't have the money for a particular flight and the points get you there, it's always going to be a good redemption. But you don't want to spend, like, for example, Delta typically charges 360,000 miles for a business class flight from the US to Europe. That is absolutely outrageous. That's terrible. But Delta charges that price because there's somebody willing to pay it. And to contrast that, Delta will charge 360,000 point in Sky Miles for a business flight to Europe. But I just booked a flight on Air France for 27,500 points. So that tells you, understanding the value of points and where you can make your miles and points go a lot further if you understand their intrinsic value.
That's awesome. Thank you. And what is your favorite destination that you've traveled to using points?
South Africa, bar none. I will sing praises for it. I even have a keychain I added a keychain, South Africa keychain with the flag on it. South Africa is amazing. It's an amazing destination, and there's so much history in it. If anybody's a fan of Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien, he was actually from South Africa. And when you look at the Misty Mountains and you look at all the scenes that you hear about in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and you go to South Africa and you see the landscape, and you can see he was completely inspired. All of Middle Earth was based on South Africa. Oh, that's exactly how South Africa looks. So
I can't wait to get there. One of these days I plan to, and that was one of my goals when I went to the Boston Travel Show, was to find someone who I can have build a relationship in Africa that I can do tours and figure out what part of Africa I want to go to do tours with. So I was able to accomplish that. And then all of a sudden I see you heading to Cape Town. I was like, what? That's all good. Thank you so much. Did you have any questions for me? I think this that wraps it up for me. But
I did have a question for you. I understand that there's two sides to travel. I know you do a lot more of the tour packages and, kind of like, I guess you say curated experiences, which is also, there's room in the space for everybody. And so I just wanted to ask, do you put together packages for travelers or for aspiring travelers, or I know you do like a kind of travel agency, because I know there's people that want to do cruises, and there's many ways people like to travel. So just give me kind of a quick snapshot about what Experience Travel Network actually does for a traveler that might be interested in such services.
Absolutely. So as a travel agent, I have access to all type of travel. So airlines, hotels, cruises. I right now I specialize in Hawaii and I'm also taking my specialization to the wellness industry, because as you know, I've been in the fitness and wellness industry for over 23 years working for an association in fitness. And so I felt this was a great opportunity, whether it's retreats that someone is doing, a fitness professional who wants to create a retreat package. And I just think that I'd like to work with those folks first, but I'd also like to bring wellness to the average and everyday American and person, because there are so many, if you're struggling with anxiety or any of that, there's so many opportunities from that exercise has, a guided hike, meditation, and just merging that wellness industry and the fitness industry. I see it's coming together, and I'd like to be part of that and show people. And I have a passion for travel, so I'd like to take all three of those and put it together to find those packages, like you said, curate those packages for people from all areas from a budget standpoint. So what I found a wellness company that is, for $300 a night, you can go and have it all inclusive. And that's in New Jersey. And then there's the other side of it where it's like $10,000 a night. so I just want to find an opportunity for whoever's looking for an opportunity to reset their mindset, to manage their mental wellness, that they have a place to go and do that. And for me, travel's always been therapy for me. So, when I go to Hawaii and I hit the ocean, I just feel like there's something in the water that just rejuvenates you. and maybe it's being in Hawaii, maybe not, but I've never traveled to the same place twice. Very much, other than Florida, because I live there and I have my family there, but really haven't traveled to the same place twice. And I fell in love with Hawaii when I went there. So now I have another group of 14 going this June, and I plan to keep going back until, I become a Hawaiian one day. I tell my husband, yeah, I think I'm going to probably retire here. This is great.
Wow. That's awesome, Nikki.